لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده أرسله الله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على دين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. Can I use one of these? Something. This morning, inshallah ta'ala, I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about the power of forgiveness. The power of forgiveness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned it in his sunnah. And it is part of what allows us to continue on as human beings. Can you imagine what type of human being you would be if you did not forgive anyone that wronged you in your life? Could you imagine what type of human being you would be if you didn't forgive anyone in your life? Islam is a religion that encourages Muslims to exercise the highest moral decorum in human interaction, which by default distinguishes the Muslim from those who settle for a more circumstantially manufactured character tailored to the surroundings that he finds himself in. Many of us, we tailor our character to the environment that we live in. And for many of us living in this country or living in this environment, that's a struggle. Because although you want to be exactly like the Prophet ﷺ, we realize that we live in an environment that views, people with good character as a form of weakness. And so although, and I don't know if this is anyone else's struggle, but this is my struggle. I want to be exactly like the Prophet ﷺ in every single facet of his life. But you know that you live in an environment that preys on weakness and that takes kindness for weakness. So you're constantly on guard and constantly trying to protect yourself from being viewed as vulnerable. All right? At the same token, you want to be exactly like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, showing this ummah that he exuded the most exemplary standard of moral character. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are on an exalted standard of character. An exalted standard of character. This is because the Prophet ﷺ's character was designed to be the blueprint for us. That's the blueprint. That is the standard. All right? And the Quran challenges the believer to aspire to a higher sense of self by encouraging the believer to exemplify qualities that go against the status quo of human behavior. We live in a society where lying is normal. Lying is normal. So Islam in the Quran challenges us to go above and beyond what is the baseline, what is the status quo in any society that we live in, to aspire for greatness in whatever is the status quo in that society. Islam speaks about two elements of forgiveness. One is the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-maghfirah. Maghfirah, which is the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there's the human forgiveness, al-afu, to pardon people and to forgive them for the wrongs that they do against you. And we need both, because one helps us with our relationship with Allah, and the other helps us with our relationship with other human beings. And they're also intertwined, because our interactions with other human beings is an extension of our interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How we deal with Allah is exactly how we will deal with human beings, and is exactly how Allah will deal with us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on many examples, I'll just give you a few. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن ارحم من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. الراحمون, those who are merciful to other people. يرحمهم الرحمن, Ar-Rahman will have mercy on them. Irham man fil ard, be merciful to those that are on the earth. Yarhamukum man fis sama, and then the one that is above the heavens will have mercy on you. Quid pro quo. You see how that works? Be merciful to those that are on the earth, and the one that is above the heaven will show you mercy. And there are tons of examples throughout the Quran and the Sunnah that show, as the Arabs, they have a saying, "Kama tudinu tudan." As you deal, so shall you be dealt with. When Bani Israel refused to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on so many occasions, on the slaughtering of the cow, they said, should it be a male or a female? Should it be domesticated, or should it be, this, or should it be that? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَذَبَحُوهَا فَمَا كَادُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. And they slaughtered, but they almost didn't do it. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish them with? Punish them by turning them into animals. Right? Turn them into qird. Turn them into animals. Monkeys. Or what's the term they use? Apes. Turn them into apes. Ibn Kathir mentions in his tafsir of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned them into apes. Because just like they almost did not obey the command of Allah, then they are almost not human beings. Kama tudinu tudan. Just as you deal, so shall you be dealt with. So forgiveness is a very powerful quality, a very powerful characteristic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself as Ghafurur Rahim in many verses in the Quran, forgiving and merciful. So the quality of forgiveness is powerful because Allah describes himself with that quality. And anything that Allah describes himself with is a powerful quality. And the human being in many instances has the ability to attain some degree, some level or some degree of that quality, which makes us the greatest of his creation. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said, أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ الْقَلَمُ. The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was the pen. He said, فَبِمُنَاسَبَةٍ. He says, so it was only appropriate that the last of Allah's creation was the recipient of the pen, the human being. He said, the pen, al-qalam ala. The pen is a tool. Wal-insan alam. And the human being is a recipient of that tool. And it was because of this knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or this ability, that Allah gave Adam virtue over the angels. So forgiveness is a very powerful quality and has the propensity to affect change in other people. Alright? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, just to show you how powerful forgiveness is, and its ability to impact other people and change the behavior of other people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة. Not equal is hasana and sayyi'ah. Good and evil. They're not equal, they're not the same. Vice and virtue, they're not the same. لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Repel evil with what is better, meaning meet imprudent behavior with forgiveness. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Then the person whom there was between you and him, or you and her, some conflict or some contention, will turn out to be your best friend. وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. And there are very few people that can maintain this level or this quality of forgiveness. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. None will be able to maintain this except those who are patient. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. And none will be able to maintain this except those who have a great share of the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was the standard. He was the standard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the power of forgiveness to affect change in other people. Sometimes we want to change the person's behavior by stepping in and, rearranging a person's life, failing to realize that sometimes you can kill a person with kindness. You can make, and this is exactly, we live in America, so you should all be familiar with Martin Luther King. You should all be familiar with him. His nonviolent approach to changing the dynamic here in America of racism It was exactly this. He thought that if we marched in the streets and we did not attack the police officers and we did not attack people that attacked us, we would allow America to see themselves. We allow the world to see what America is doing to us. And hopefully that will make them be ashamed of what they are doing to us simply because of the color of our skin and change. That was his approach. Idfa' billati hiya ahsan. Repel evil with what is better. Meet, contention with forgiveness. And the one that was between you and him will be as if you guys were close friends. On the authority of Ibn Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال أمر بالصبر عند الغضب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us to be to have sabr, to have patience when we're angry. وَبِالْحِلْمِ عِنْدَ الْجَهْلِ, and to become tolerant when people act imprudent or ignorant towards us. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam epitomized وَبِالْعَفْوِ عِنْدَ الْإِسَاءَةِ, and to pardon and forgive people when they wrong us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam epitomized and embodied this quality of forgiveness, showing us that no matter how deep others go in the depths of their ignorance, it does not dictate our behavior. I don't care how ignorant you act towards me, that is not going to have any impact on the way that I act towards you. I don't care how deep you go in your ignorance, it does not dictate my behavior. That's a sign of weakness to allow someone else to control your behavior. Well, he said this to me, so you said that back. So that means that you gave him power over you. You allowed him to dictate, because although you didn't want to do that or say that, your reaction, your knee-jerk reaction to what he said is an indication of your weakness, is indicative of your weakness because you gave him power over you. On the authority of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, قالت لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هل أتى عليك يوم كان أشد من يوم أحد؟ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لقد لقيت من قومك وكان أشد ما لقيت منهم يوم العقبة إذ عرضت نفسي على ابن أبي يالي ابن كلال فلم يجبني إلى ما أردت فانطلقت وأنا مهموم على وجهي فلم أستفق إلا بقرن الثعالب فرفعت رأسي فإذا أنا بسحابة قد أظلتني فنظرت فإذا فيها جبريل فناداني فقال يا رسول الله إن الله قد سمع قول قومك إن الله قد سمع قول قومك لك وما ردوا عليك وقد بعث إليك ملك الجبال لتأمره بما شئت قال فناداني ملك الجبال وسلم علي ثم قال يا محمد إن الله قد سمع قول قومك لك وأنا ملك الجبال قد بعثني ربك إليك لتأمرني بأمرك فما شئت إن شئت لأطبقن عليهم الأخشبين فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بل أرجو أن يخرج الله من أصلابهم من يعبد الله وحده ولا يشرك به شيئا. Aisha asked the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, O Messenger of Allah, have you ever seen a day where it was more difficult for you than the day of Uhud? The day of Uhud was a rough day for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He lost his uncle. Some of the Sahaba were martyred. Even he himself, had his tooth chipped, and he was thrown down into, a ditch. Ibn Qami'ah, he threw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a ditch, and he stood over top of him, and he said, "Ana Ibn Qami'ah, I'm Ibn Qami'ah," standing over top of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was met with, some frustration on that day. So Aisha asked him, is there any day besides the day of Uhud that you found more difficult for you? And he said, yes. He said, I went out and I, began my mission of Tawheed, calling people to La ilaha illallah. He said, and I came to an individual, Ibn Abd Yalali, or Yalail, Ibn Kilal, and he refused to give me asylum and to give me refuge so that I could convey the message of my Lord. He said, so I ran off, mahmumun ala wajhi, frustrated and anxious and frustrated. And he went to the incident when he went to the place of Taif. And he began to call the people to Islam there. And they refused. As a matter of fact, they told their children to throw rocks at the Prophet ﷺ, to chase him and throw rocks at him. And they knew how he felt about children, but they took the thing that he loved the most and used it against him. This is what happens when people know your weaknesses. We do it to one another in our marriages. When our wives know how to press our buttons, they know what your weaknesses are. They know what your weaknesses are. Right? They push your buttons. They use the things sometimes that you love the most against you. In some instances, you have husband and wife separate, and they'll use the children to create turmoil in your life because they know how you feel about your children, and vice versa. Man remarries and, he has no concern for the children, but to make the ex-wife's life miserable, when she remarries, well, I want my children. Now Islam comes into play. Right? We use the thing that you love the most. So they commanded their children to throw stones at the Prophet ﷺ. He said, so I looked up and I saw Angel Jibreel. And he said to me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has heard the refusal of your people. You called them, they refused. Allah heard that. And the beauty of this is that although Angel Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ to inform him that Allah heard him, we are just left to believe that. We are left to just believe that Allah hears us when we're wronged, in that moment when we feel like, are you going to do this to me? In that very moment when you feel like someone has wronged you, just think about this, that Allah has heard the comment that the person made to you. Allah heard it. There's no need to get frustrated anymore. He said, and Allah has sent to you an angel of the mountains for you to command him with whatever you like. The angel of the mountains gave the Prophet ﷺ salams, assalamu alayk. He said, Ana malakul jibal, I am the angel of the mountain. Pay attention to this. He said, Allah has sent me to you for you to command me to do whatever you like. He said, In shi'ta la'atbaqanna alayhim al-akhshabain. He said that if you will, I'll take these two mountains and I'll flip them over on the city of Taif because of what they did to you. You have to make sure that as the oppressed, you do not become the oppressor. Sometimes we are right and we're wrong when we're right. How is that possible? Because we take a situation wherein we were wronged and we are the madloom, we are the oppressed, and we use that as an opportunity to justify our oppression against someone else. And in some instances, the person that has actually oppressed us. Very dangerous, man. That's a test for you at that moment, to see if you are going to transgress the boundaries in pursuit of your haqq, in pursuit of your right. The Prophet ﷺ he went from being the oppressed, all right, the victim, to now being in a situation where he could have become the oppressor. He could have commanded, and although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we could say, well, how could he be the oppressor? Didn't Allah send the angel there to command him to do whatever he liked? Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a choice in the matter. And just because we have a choice doesn't mean that we actually have a choice. What does that mean? When the Prophet ﷺ was given a container of wine and a container of milk, what did he choose? He chose the milk. When the Prophet ﷺ was given the choice to choose to remain in this life or to go and be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did he choose? To go away, to die. You have a choice. Allah gives you a choice. But your choice will be based upon your natural inclination towards good. You always have a choice. But just because you have a choice doesn't absolve you of the responsibility. See, what we do is we'll say, well, it's the sunnah. And we'll totally neglect the mess that we are about to create in following that sunnah. Right? If I walked in here right now with my shoes on, coming from outside, I went in the bathroom, I washed the bottom of my shoes, and I stepped onto the musalla floor with my shoes on. I'm sure that many of you in here would have been very offended by that. Right or wrong?
Throw you out of the window.
Throw you out the window, right? But it's the sunnah to pray with your shoes on. So just because you have a choice does not mean that you are absolved of individual responsibility, is what I'm saying. So sometimes we look at the options that we have in front of us and we say, well, this is part of Islam. I didn't do anything wrong. But look at the mess that you created by your decision. Some brothers do this when they choose to marry another wife. They choose to go into polygyny. And then in the process of that, you end up destroying somebody else's life. And then we'll say, well, I didn't do any wrong. That's her problem. She has a problem with polygyny. She has a problem with Allah. Her problem is not with me. I didn't do anything wrong. But look at the mess that you created. Look at the mess that you made in your decision. You always have a choice. You always have an option. But don't allow your choices to transition you from being the oppressed, the madloom, to becoming the zalim, becoming the oppressor. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a position where now you have the authority over other people that wronged you, that now becomes a test of your character. Because the quality of your character is not on how you treat your friends, but how you treat your enemies. And when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, in many instances, he never met fire with fire. Because when you meet fire with fire, you get a bigger flame. You get a bigger flame. So he was in a very comfortable position now. These were people who rejected his message, commanded their children to throw rocks at him. All right. And now he's in a position of authority where he could execute. He could execute. And this is where your forgiveness is tested. Forgiveness is not tested when it's convenient for you. Your forgiveness, your character is tested when you are in a situation where you have a choice. As Prophet Shu'aib said, هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَشْكُرَ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. This is from the bounty, the favor of my Lord to test me, to see if I'm going to be grateful or ungrateful. At that very moment. In that very moment. So the Prophet ﷺ, he looked at the angel. And what was his response? Many of us, if you were in that situation, how would you have responded? Because some of us, we allow our anger and our frustration to transition us from being the oppressed to the oppressor. We're so angry. Sometimes we take it out on people who don't even deserve it. That is when you become the oppressor. You become the oppressor when you take it out on the people that don't deserve it, and you go over and beyond what was done to you. They rejected his message, and they had their children throw rocks at them. Does that mean that all of them deserve to die? They all deserve to die? Flip both mountains on top of the whole city and destroy everybody? So at that moment, the Prophet ﷺ was being tested. And as he always did, he always opted for what was easy. He always opted for what was natural, what was part of his character, the fabric of his character. He said to the angel, he said, La, don't do that. He said, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide from their children, from their progeny. Maybe not them, Maybe they are a destroyed generation. But I'm looking at the generation to come after them and those that will come after them. This was a leader. He was thinking so far ahead, light years ahead. Some of us don't even do that even in our own Islamic communities. We're thinking for right now. We're not thinking we go and we open a mosque and it's just like this 4 walls, this little box. We're not thinking about the children that we are having right now and then those children are going to have more children. Right? We're not thinking 10, 15 years down the line, creating a majal, creating a realm wherein our children's children, will have an Islamic school, will have, Islamic activities. And we're not thinking that far ahead. Sometimes as Muslim communities, we kind of just take it day by day. We don't really think years ahead. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, don't destroy them. Perhaps Allah will guide from their progeny. Min aslabihim, from their progeny, those who will worship Allah alone and not associate partners. I lost this one. I lost this generation. But maybe their children's children, maybe their progeny will worship Allah. So in that moment, the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed his forgiveness. And that was the power of his forgiveness because Taif is a city in Saudi Arabia today. Everybody's there is Muslim. Everybody there is Muslim. So, you can see the fulfillment of that prophecy. That, the Prophet ﷺ, but that was by way of his forgiveness. That is the power of forgiveness. Alright? So sometimes people go too far in their transgression against you and leave very little room for reconciliation. Sometimes people go too far in their disrespect of you or they're insulting you and it leaves very little room for reconciliation, but we still have to maintain a divine decorum that we have been instructed to observe in the Quran and in the Sunnah, despite the opposition to do so. Because other people's behavior towards us does not dictate our behavior towards them. قال سفيان بن عيينة وكان ابن إياش يقع في عمر بن ذار في عمرو بن ذار فلقيه عمر فقال يا هذا لا تفرط في شتمنا وأبقي للصلح موضعه فإن لا نكافئ من عصى الله فينا بأكثر من أن نطيع الله فيه. رواه مالك في الموطأ. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he mentioned a narration that happened, a situation that happened between 2 scholars of the past, Ibn Iyash and Umar ibn Dhar. What happened between them? Ma bayna al-ulama. What also happens between scholars from time to time? This one criticizes this one, that one criticizes that one. It happens, past and present. Sometimes our egos get involved. Because they're scholars don't mean that they are exempt from human flaw and weakness. They're not prophets, they're not messengers. They're human beings. So why do we think today, because a scholar said something about this scholar, that ego is not involved in that, or some type of, why do we remove that as if they are exempt from that? It happens. It happens. So Ibn Iyash, he spoke about Umar ibn Dhar. And so one day Umar met him, saw him, and he said, Ya hada la tufarrid fi shatmina. He said, don't exaggerate your insults of me. Don't go too far in your insulting me. وَأَبْقِ لِلصُّلْحِ مَوْضِئًا. Leave a little room for us to reconcile. Don't go so far that you burn the bridge that we crossed over and we can never go back the opposite way. Sometimes people insult you or they talk about you behind your back. And you're saying, give me a break. Leave a little room for us to reconcile. Don't go so far. Even in our relationships with our wives. Sometimes they get angry. They get emotionally compromised. And they start saying things and you're like, okay, just stop here because you're going to go too far. Stop. Don't say anything else, please. And I think that couples should have a safe word. Every couple should have a safe word. Meaning there's a word that you say, and when that word, and this is a word that you guys agreed upon in a state where you could think you weren't emotionally compromised. And that you agree that when we say this word, that ends all conversation. We stop wherever we are, we stop. Because if that is not the case, then you don't know how far that conversation is going to go. And Shaitan is right there, pushing you to go further and further. All right? So he said to him, don't exaggerate in your insults of me. وَأَبْقِ لِلصُّلْحِ مَوْضِعًا, and leave room for us to reconcile. He said, because I can't reward a person who chooses to disobey Allah concerning me with any more than to obey Allah concerning him. So if you choose to continue disobeying Allah concerning my right, insulting me, talking about me behind my back, backbiting me, if you choose to disobey Allah concerning me, I can't reward you with any more than to obey Allah concerning you. Meaning your behavior does not dictate my behavior. So you continue backbiting me, talking about me behind my back, spreading lies about me, doing videos on the internet about you. Continue doing that. And I will do nothing more than to obey Allah concerning you. Because your behavior does not dictate my behavior. And this is a challenge for most of us because we live in an environment where the quality, as I said, of forgiveness is viewed as a weakness. Even amongst Muslims. Even amongst Muslims in Islamic community. To forgive someone, in many instances, is interpreted as a weakness. And people will do it again because they feel like, oh, well, you forgave him, you let him get away with it. So it must be okay to insult you or disrespect you. So forgiveness is viewed as some sort of weakness or some sort of, invalidation of one's feelings. All right, we feel like when we forgive someone, then what about my feelings? Like I'm just left here to be invalidated. So we choose not to forgive someone because by not forgiving them, we feel like we're validating ourselves. You're not validating yourself by not forgiving someone. You are hurting yourself. Forgiveness is about you, not about the other person. دخل على مالك بن دينار لص فما وجد ما يأخذ فناداه مالك لم تجد شيئا من الدنيا أفترغب في شيء من الآخرة فقال الرجل نعم فقال توضأ وصلي ركعتين ففعل ثم خرج إلى المسجد فسئل مالك من هذا قال لص جاء ليسرق فسرقناه. Malik ibn Dinar, one of the scholars of the past, a thief broke into his house and tried to steal something out of his home. So Malik is watching him from afar, looking for something to steal in his house. So then Malik called him and he said, Ya hada, lam tajid shay'an min ad-dunya. He said, you didn't find anything in my home from the dunya. Because scholars live very easy lives, very simple lifestyle. They're not going to find, gold watches. You're not going to find this or that, anything worth taking. He said, you didn't find anything from the dunya to steal. He said, أَفَتَرْغَبْ فِي شَيْءٍ مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ. Would you like to steal something from the hereafter? You didn't find anything in my house to steal from the dunya. You want to steal something from the hereafter? So when the guy realized he was caught, Malik, he said, yes. So Malik ibn Dinar said to him, تَوَضَّعْ وَصَلِّ رَكَعَتَيْنِ. Make wudu and pray 2 rak'ah. And when he came out with the man on his way to the masjid, people were asking Malik ibn Dinar, who is this person with you? He said, he's a thief. He came to steal, but I stole him. جاء ليسرق فسرقناه. He came to steal, but I stole him. Meaning I won his heart over. Because I didn't deal with him in a way that a person would normally be dealt with if he got caught stealing out of somebody's house. You see the power of forgiveness? The power of forgiveness. I stole his heart. He came to steal something out of my home, but I stole his heart in the process. And this type of forgiveness is called al-afu. which means to release or to heal. In relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah relieves us of the burden of sin. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. It's a dua the Prophet ﷺ taught Aisha to make during the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she said, O Messenger of Allah, if one of us was to find Laylatul Qadr during the last 10 nights of Ramadan, what should I say? What is the dua, the appropriate dua to make during Laylatul Qadr if I find it? He said, you should say, O Aisha, Allahumma innaka afu tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Oh Allah, you are al-afu. You are the pardoner or the forgiver. Wa tuhibbul afwa, and you love to forgive. Fa'fu anni. Forgive me. Forgive me. Pardon me. So the word afu means to release or to heal. And in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah ya'fu anna, Allah pardons us, He releases us from the burden of sin. Sin is heavy. Sin is heavy, man. You don't agree? Or we don't sin? The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ بَنِي آدَمْ خَطَّاءٌ وَخَيْرَ خَطَّائِينَ تَوَّابُونَ. All of the children of Adam are sinners. All of the children of Adam are sinners. We're just trying to be the best sinner that we can be. And the best sinner is the one that repents. Not the best sinner that you commit the best sins. The best sinner that you treat your sin seriously and you repent immediately. Alright? So we're trying to essentially be the best sinners we can be. It sounds weird, right? I'm trying to be the best sinner I can be. It's like, what did you just say? Right. It's a play on words. It's a play on words, but understand the context in which it is said. So the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us to make this dua if we ever found ourselves in Laylatul Qadr, or what we believe was Laylatul Qadr. So it means to release or to heal. And in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means to relieve us from the burden of sin or from His punishment for our sins. As it relates to our interactions with one another, it means forgiveness. Because by forgiving someone, it allows you to heal. By forgiving someone, it allows you to heal. We said the word afu, linguistically, it means to heal. So as it relates to the human being, when you forgive people for wronging you, it gives you time to heal. You cannot heal from something that someone did that was wrong to you. You can't heal. You can't begin your healing process until you learn how to let the person go from your clutches of frustration and anger and hatred. When you let go, you have now started your journey towards forgiveness. You can heal now. As long as you holding that person tight, all right? This is metaphorically, right? You're holding that person by the throat. Literally, your life feels like a clenched fist. That's how you feel. Every time the person's name is mentioned, every time you see their face, you literally feel like a clenched fist. When you learn how to let that person go, sometimes we got to kind of pry your hands open, right? Let them go. Let it go. All right? When Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was praying behind one of the Sahaba and he was reciting a surah, Umar said, لَقَدْ هَمَمْتُ أَنْ أَلُبَّهُ وَأَنَا فِي الصَّلَاةِ لَكِنِّي صَبَرْتُ. He said, I wanted to grab him by his throat while we were in the prayer, but I was patient. Because he was reciting a surah, the same surah the Prophet ﷺ taught me, but in a manner that the Prophet never taught me. Umar thought this individual was introducing something new into the religion. So Umar said, I wanted to grab him by his throat while we were in the prayer. But I was patient. Umar said, as soon as we made the taslim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, he said, I grabbed him by his throat. And I dragged him all the way to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet asked him, Umar, what's the problem? He said, O Messenger of Allah, he's reciting a surah. Got him in his hands. Got him by his throat. He said, he is reciting a surah. The same surah you taught me, but not in the manner that you taught me. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Umar utruku. Let him go. Let him go. Release him. And then he told Umar, Iqra, recite. So Umar started to recite the same surah. And he said, both of you are correct. The Quran has been revealed in 7 different modes of recitation. You're both right. So the point that I'm making is that thinking back to what I do sometimes is you have all of this information floating around in your head. So I always try to find a Quranic reference or reference from the Sunnah, to help me navigate through whatever issues I'm talking about or whatever issues I'm going through in my life. I always try to go back to an incident or a story or something that I can find, in my Rolodex, right? That will help me make sense of what is happening. So I kind of, even during my talks, I will always revert back to a story or something like this, just to kind of help us make connections to the information that we have. We have all this information stored in our heads, but we don't really know how that information is relevant until a situation arises that makes that information relevant. So the point that I'm making is that you can't begin to heal when someone has wronged you until you let the person go. You pardon them and forgive them, because it's not about them. Your journey to forgiveness or your journey to forgiveness and healing is not about the other person. It's about you. So when you forgive the person, you know what? I've forgiven you. Don't worry about it. Now that is one less thing that you have to worry about in terms of your journey to healing. Am I making sense? I know it's after Fajr, but I'm looking at faces and I'm not getting a response. And resentment is a burden. Resentment, hating someone, wallahi, I can tell you, as someone who is as stubborn as my mother. I am very stubborn, very. It's not a quality that I like about myself. It's one of my own, character flaws. All right? I don't mind sharing that, because it's not a vulnerability, because I know what my vices are. And as the scholars, they say, ma'rifatu al-mard or ma'rifatu al-illa nisf al-ilaj. Knowing your disease is half of your cure. So I'm halfway there. I'm halfway there. But resenting someone and hating someone for something that they did to you, it's a burden when you walk around with that. I know brothers, man, who haven't spoken to their parents for years because they, the father or the mom, didn't do something for them, or, they were trying to get married and the father or the mother didn't support them in their marriage, and so therefore they took it as an opportunity to not speak to their mother. Can you imagine not speaking to your mother for a year, 2 years, 3 years have gone by and you haven't spoken to your mother or your father? I know brothers and sisters that are like this, that have so much resentment. And the sad thing about it is that you really want to speak to them. But your stubbornness, is not allowing you to just let go. And just go to the person and say, hey, listen, whatever you did, I've forgiven you. Don't worry about it. It's okay. All right, so resentment is a burden. And forgiveness is about you and not about the other person. Don't let anyone, brothers and sisters, and those that are listening, don't let anyone occupy any space in your heart. Don't let anyone live in your heart rent-free. They're not paying rent, they got to go. Evict them. Don't let anyone live in your heart rent-free, man. Don't let anyone occupy space in your heart unnecessarily. You only have one heart. And your heart, is only but so big and can only accommodate so many people. There's some people who you don't even have room in your heart for them. I don't have enough room in my heart for you. When the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لو كنت متخذا أحدا خليلا لاتخذت أبا بكر خليلا لكن الله اتخذني خليلا. فأخوة الإسلام ومحبة. He said that if I was going to take anyone as an intimate friend, I would have taken Abu Bakr as a Khalil, as an intimate friend. But Allah had already taken me as an intimate friend, just like He took Ibrahim as an intimate friend. So I suffice myself with the brotherhood of Islam and my love for him as a Muslim. But that space in my heart is only for Allah. I don't have any room for anybody else in that space. Some people, if you draw rings around your heart, all right, all the way down to the smallest little ring, we try to fit everybody into the smallest little ring around our hearts. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Umirna an nunazzila an-nas manazilahum." We have been commanded to put everyone in their proper place. Everyone does not belong in the center of your heart. There's some people that belong on the outskirts, and there's some people that don't belong in your heart at all. We have been commanded to put everyone in their proper place. When you try to fit everybody into the center of your heart, you end up frustrated because some of those people are going to disappoint you. We call ourselves being free spirits and just loving everybody. And you swing like a pendulum. Because the harder you love, the harder you hate. Wallahi, I kid you not. The harder you love, the harder you hate when you hit rock bottom. When someone, violates you or, puts you in a vulnerable situation and takes advantage of you. The harder you love, the harder you hate. You have some people that love hard. And the danger with loving hard is that you hate hard too. All right? So while we enjoy that woman, we married and she goes hard for us, when you disappoint that woman, she's going to hate you as hard as she loved you. Because some people just don't have a balance with those emotions. They're one way or the other. They don't have a middle course. So when you see someone that hates hard, they don't forgive, 9 times out of 10, they love hard too, which is why they hate hard. And it's a very dangerous quality, man. We have to take a middle course in everything that we do and not be extreme because we think that it's a good thing. I can be extreme even in good things. No, extremism is extremism, whether it's good or bad. Some of us destroy our own children because we're extremely nice and good to them. So they grow up in life, in this world, thinking that everybody is going to be the same. They grow up with this privileged attitude because my mom and my dad gave me everything, right? You set your children up for failure. It's not good to be extreme in anything, whether good or bad. But moderation. When the hypocrites in Medina accused the Prophet ﷺ, accused Aisha of adultery, and I'll end with this, inshallah. I had you guys for too long. Okay. When the Prophet ﷺ's wife Aisha was accused of adultery, right? One of the accusers turned out to be Mistah ibn Uthatha, who was the cousin of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala. They accused Aisha of adultery. They saw her coming into Medina with this individual. She was on the camel and he was walking the camel, and the hypocrites of Medina used that opportunity to say that they did something that was inappropriate. So the community is in turmoil. People are running around saying that Aisha did this and accusing her of that. One of the individuals that was involved in that situation was a man by the name of Mistah, who was the cousin of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala. The funny thing about this situation is Abu Bakr used to give him sadaqah. Abu Bakr used to give him sadaqah. And when Abu Bakr found out that Mistah was involved, he decided that I will never give him another dime sadaqah, another dirham sadaqah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded him of this situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولِي الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أن يؤتوا أولو القربى والمساكين والمهاجرين في سبيل الله وليعفوا وليصفحوا ألا تحبون أن يغفر الله لكم والله غفور رحيم. Allah admonished Abu Bakr in an ayah in Surah An-Nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and let not those of you who have wealth or have the means to give sadaqah take an oath or swear not to assist those who are less fortunate. From your family members, from those who migrated, and from those who are poor and destitute. He said, وَلِيَعْفُوا, pardon and forgive. Pardon. وَلِيَصْفَحُوا, and forgive and overlook. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you want Allah to forgive and overlook your flaws and your mistakes? Here again, going back to the original concept that I started off with, Kama tudinu tudan. As you deal, so shall you be dealt with. As you deal with other people, so shall Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deal with you. He said, why don't you pardon and overlook? Wouldn't you want Allah to forgive you? أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Wouldn't you want Allah to forgive you? Wallahu ghafurur rahim. And Allah is forgiving and merciful. And Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said when this ayat was revealed, he said, Bala wallahi, inna nahnu, ya Rabbana, nuhibbu an taghfir lana. ثم رجع إلى مصطح وما كان يصله من النفقة وقال والله لأنزئها منه أبدا في مقابلة ما كان قال والله لأنفق عليه أبدا. That when the ayat was revealed, Abu Bakr, he said, Wallahi, we would love nothing more than for Allah to forgive us. And he went to Mistah and he said, you know what? I will never deny you another dirham of sadaqah. And this was in contrast to his initial statement, Wallahi, I will never give you another dirham sadaqah. So he went back to Mistah and he said, Wallahi, I will never deny you another dirham sadaqah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, wouldn't you want Allah to forgive you? So the point that I'm making is that these qualities of forgiveness and mercy and compassion, these are godly qualities. These are qualities that are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we adorn ourselves with these qualities, then we have elevated ourselves above the status quo of human behavior, and we have ventured into a different realm that sets us aside from the rest of creation. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to embody this quality of forgiveness with our children, with our parents, with our spouses, with our brothers and sisters in Islam. We need forgiveness, man. We have been hardened by our circumstances, hardened by our situation here in America. Hardened, man. I've subhanallah al-azim, I've run to, in the outer world, I've run into people who would literally give you their right arm. People who would bend over backwards for you and they don't even know you. Complete stranger, man. I told the story before about how me and my wife, we wanted to go make Hajj, man. And subhanallah, I was a student in the Islamic University at the time. And I wanted to take my wife to go make Hajj. So during that time, you had to have what is called a tasrih. You had to have a permission slip from the university to go make Hajj. Many of the students just go. They don't go follow the protocol. They just go. But when you get to the taftish, when you get to the checkpoint, and they ask you for your paperwork, you stuck. And sometimes you might get past the first checkpoint. There are actually 3 checkpoints on Tariq al-Medina, which is the road that takes you from Medina all the way to Mecca. All right, it would be like considered I-95, right? So there are 3 checkpoints. One when you're coming out of Medina. There's one when you get close to Jeddah. One when you get close to Jeddah, and then there's one right before you go into Mecca. Okay, so even if you get past the first 2 checkpoints, when you get to the last one going into Mecca, that's the most difficult. You see cars pulled over on the side. Some students have been sent all the way back to Medina, got all the way to Mecca, and get turned around, send you right back to Medina because you don't have the permission slip. So I decided, as I normally do, I'm a gambler. I just jump. I told my wife, I said, we're just going to go. This is our opportunity. I don't know how many more years we're going to be in Medina. And when we leave, I don't even know if we'll have the money to even come back. So let's do it now. It is what it is. She was my ride or die chick. So I go to this, the African cab drivers, right? Or Arab cab drivers. So what they do is they try to fit as many people as they can in their cabs. And then they take you. So I'm in the cab, in the front seat, me, my wife, and my first son, who at the time was about 2 years old. So I had to carry him. And we're sitting in the front seat, squished up. And he has about, 6 people in the back seat. Some Africans from Nigeria. They were going to make Hajj, right? So we all squished up in this little car. So I told the guy, I'm not going to pay you until you get me past the border. Because a lot of them, they have they have this underhanded stuff that they do. All right. There's a criminal element there. All right. I confess. I'm not as righteous as you thought I was. So I told the guy, I said, I'm not going to pay you until we get past the last taftish, because I know the game. They'll get you past the first 2 and they'll say, all right, pay me. I can't take you any further, but I got you to Jeddah. No. You're going to get me past the 3rd taftish until I get into Mecca. And then I'll pay you. So he said, okay, you don't have to pay me until we get there. I said, okay. So we get past the first one. Not a problem. Get past the second one. Now, mind you, we're traveling. We left after Isha. So this was an all-night journey, right? This was an all-night journey. We didn't reach Jeddah until it was time for Fajr. We got out the car, we prayed Fajr, whatever the case may be. After Fajr, we were at the second taftish, right before the third one, the last one. And he pulled the stunt. He said, I can't go any further. They're not going to let me go. You got to pay me now. And, I said, so how are me and my wife going to get to Mecca? We don't have a ride. We don't have any paperwork. So he's like, well, I don't have anything to do with that. Pay me. So I'm like, I'm not paying you nothing, and we started arguing. Now, mind you, I'm in ihram and everything. I'm arguing with this guy. I can barely speak Arabic. It was only my second year in the university, so I really hadn't mastered the Arabic language at that point. So, I'm speaking to him in English and Arabic. I'm the type of person, when I get frustrated, I can't speak Arabic. I just start talking English. And the Saudi, they're looking at you like, Ish, what are you talking about? So a Saudi guy saw me arguing with him while I had my ihram on, and my wife standing there with the baby. So he comes over to me, very calm and very nice, and he's like, Assalamu alaikum. He said, you're a student in the university? I said, yes. Now he's speaking to me in Arabic. He said, you're a student in the university? I said, yes. He said, what's the problem with you and this guy? I said, well, he promised me he was going to get me past the 3rd checkpoint, and he didn't. We only have the 2nd checkpoint, and I don't have a ride, and I don't have any paperwork or anything to get into Mecca. He said he was going to, work something out for me. He was like, just pay him, and I'll take you. I was like, no, I'm not paying him. Still stubborn, I'm not paying him. He said, well, just give him half. He said, these guys, they wait for Hajj time, and this is how they feed their families. He said, so although, it was a hustle, he said, it's a hustle. You understand that. This guy has to go, how is this guy going to go home and tell his wife and his children that you didn't pay him? He said, and you don't want that on your consciousness. You were about to perform Hajj. So, I gave him half. It was sweet talk. So he said, you and your wife and your kid can get in the car with me. It's a Saudi. Now, they have a certain privilege in Saudi Arabia, okay? They can kind of pull strings for you. So I said to him, he's like, so he said, where are you from? I said, we're from America or whatever. Started asking me how I converted to Islam or whatever. So we get to the last taftish, right before we get into Mecca. And I said, he said, do you have your paperwork? Do you have any paperwork? I said, no, I don't have the paperwork. I said, I only got my iqama, which was my temporary residency card. So he said, tawakkal ala Allah. He said, put your trust in Allah. Don't worry about it. I said, man, they're not going to let us through. I'm at this time, I'm still a new convert to Islam, new student of knowledge. You're not really settled in terms of your spirituality. This was an older guy, more settled in life and, more comfortable in his relationship with Allah. So he looks at me and he says, Tawakkal ala Allah. Put your trust in Allah. And I'm like, man, they're gonna send this back, man, So he's like, we get to the taftish. The Saudi guy says, where's your iqama? He showed him his iqama. He said, well, where's his tasrih? Where's his permission slip from the university? He said, yeah, he's a student of knowledge. He came from America. He converted to Islam. Are you going to deny him his fifth pillar of Islam over a piece of paper? I mean, this guy could have been a pimp, man, in America. Like, he just sweet talking everybody, man. He said, are you going to deny this guy his fifth pillar of Islam over a piece of paper? And the cop, he just looked at me and he was like, Ruh, faddal, go. I said, Subhanallah al-Azim, man. This guy drove me all the way to Masjid al-Haram. Complete stranger. I don't know this guy from anywhere. We pulled up at the masjid. I saw Masjid al-Haram right in front of me. Tears in my eyes, man. And he was like, go ahead and get out, go make Hajj. I said, can I pay you? I was going to give him the rest of the money that I was going to give the cab driver. I said, let me get you. He said, I don't want anything. He said, go. I said, no, come on, man. Let me give you something. He said, I don't want your money. I didn't do this for money. I don't want your money. Go, make Hajj. The only thing I ask you to do is when you get to the Kaaba, pray for me and my family. Complete stranger, man. Never asked for a dime, man. And we have lost that element here in America. We've lost that. Our fear is that someone wants something from us. When we initially approach someone, our fears and anxiety is, I hope he don't ask me for any money. I hope he doesn't, want to do any business with me. I hope he does not come and ask me for my daughter in marriage. We have so many fears, with dealing with one another, man. It's sad. Because our circumstance, our environment has hardened us. That's not our nature as Muslims. Our nature is to be forgiving and to be merciful and to be compassionate with one another. Ruhama'u bainahum. Allah described the Sahaba as being compassionate and merciful to one another. The Sahaba would give another companion just solely on the basis of him being a companion. The Prophet ﷺ made a pact of brotherhood between Abdurrahman ibn Auf and Sa'd ibn Rabi'ah. Abdurrahman ibn Auf was the wealthiest man in Mecca, but he migrated to Medina leaving everything. And so the Prophet ﷺ strategically wanted to pair them up based upon their likenesses and in some instances based upon their differences. He paired Salman al-Farisi and Abu Darda. You guys are brothers. Abu Darda, extra super religious. Salman al-Farisi, convert to Islam. You see how that pair? And they were able to balance each other out. He paired Abdurrahman ibn Auf with Sa'd ibn Rabi'ah. What was the connection here? Abdurrahman ibn Auf was the wealthiest man in Mecca. Left everything to migrate with the Prophet ﷺ. Sa'd ibn Rabi'ah was the wealthiest man in Medina. The richest man in Medina. Paired them together. You two, brothers. Sa'd, he said to Abdurrahman, he said, Ana nasifuka nisfa mali. I will give you half of my wealth. Half of what I own is yours. Take it. He said, and I have 2 wives. He said, look at both of my wives. Whichever one of them pleases you, I will divorce her. When she finishes her iddah period, you can marry her. Didn't know him from a can of spray paint. But solely on the basis of the brotherhood of Islam, he was willing to give him half of what he owned, including one of his own wives. That's love. That's compassion. That's mercy. And Abdurrahman said, Barakallahu laka fi malika wa ahlika dullani ala suq. He said, may Allah bless you in your wealth and your family. I don't want any of your money, and I don't want any one of your wives. Just show me where the marketplace is. I go make my own. I don't want no handouts. These people had integrity, man. Show me where the marketplace was. And in no time, Abdurrahman ibn Auf became the wealthiest man in Medina. Once a hustler, always a hustler. You never lose the hustle. It is what it is. That's just part of your DNA, man. The point that I'm making is that we have to return back to these qualities, man. Return back to these qualities of forgiveness, mercy, compassion, starting with ourselves. Be merciful to yourself. Be merciful to yourself. Sometimes we need sleep. We deprive ourselves of sleep because of constantly engaging other people. Have mercy on yourself. Take some time off for yourself. I mean, you got, 10 vacation days in a year. So out of 365 days, you only get 355. You only get 10 days for yourself. And those 10 days are usually spent with children and family and things like that. Be merciful to yourself. فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْتِي. Someone who doesn't have something can't give something. If you don't have any mercy on yourself, then how are you going to have mercy with other people? فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْتِي. Someone who doesn't have something can't give something. ابدأ بنفسك وما تقول. Begin with yourself and then those whom you are responsible for. Have mercy on yourself. Begin to be merciful to yourself. Start having mercy and compassion with yourself. Stop putting yourself in risky situations. Stop putting yourself in situations where you may jeopardize your health or your wealth. Stop playing with your soul. Have mercy on yourself. Stop committing sin. Stop. It's easier to be obedient to Allah than to commit sin and then got to work your way back up to where you were with Allah. Stop putting yourself in those situations. Have mercy. Irham nafsak. Ihtarim nafsak. Have mercy on yourself. Respect yourself. And when you begin to incorporate mercy on yourself, then you will have it easily to give to other people. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وسبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I don't know if there were any questions or comments about what was presented. Take a couple minutes, inshallah. I'm going to open up the Periscope if you guys have any questions about what was presented.
Brother